Hi, I'm John Mize Jr. with James River Laser and Equipment. Today I'm going to be guiding you through the process of localization using Topcon's Pocket 3D. Before we get started, let's briefly cover what localization entails. Localization is essentially aligning two different coordinate systems, the coordinate systems that are used in your plans and GPS coordinate system. The coordinate systems in your plans are typically local coordinates, usually state plane coordinates, which is a regional system, and in contrast, GPS uses a global coordinate system. The goal is to ensure that Pocket 3D correctly matches specific GPS coordinates to your local coordinates. We achieve this by visiting and measuring multiple known control points. A good control is essential for an accurate localization and to help prevent issues in the future. Now, while you can localize with a minimum of 3, you are realistically going to want at least 5, and more is always better. These control points should be located in an undisturbed area so that if you need them in the future, they will be accessible. Additionally, you will want your surveyor to clearly mark these so that they're easy to identify. With all of this out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. There are several different ways to localize, and setups will vary. The most common will make use of a permanent base post. Typically this is a 4x4 wooden post, but any permanent mounting post solution with a good view of the sky will work. Now, the first thing we're going to do is set up the base on a known control point. We're using a GPS tripod, which makes the setup simple. You can use a regular tripod, but you will need to have a tri-brack so that you can make sure that it is perfectly level and plumb directly over the control point. And you will have to measure from the control point as well up to the base of the GPS head. Alternatively, and if necessary, you can put it on the ground, and that requires no measuring. Now, while that is not recommended, it does work in a pinch, but it won't work with all GPS models due to variations in design. The Hyper-VR with its flat bottom and top-mounted radio antenna works well for that. Now, I'm not going to cover all the setup details, but there are some very important specifics that we will need to go over. Now, first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Setup, GPS Base Station. You're going to choose Known Control Point. Now, this is the control point that you have your base set up on. For us, it's 1000. Make sure the connection is Bluetooth, so that's what you're going to be using, and hit Next. Antenna type, this is essentially the model that you're using. This is a Hyper-VR for us. And the antenna height is going to be, for us, 6.56 feet, because that's exactly what the GPS-based tripod is set up on. If you're using a regular tripod, you'll use what you measured previously, and if it's on the ground, you'll put 0. But for us, 6.56. Radio type. This is going to vary depending on your model and the radio that's installed in it. Now, configuring that is outside the scope of this video, and ours is already configured. So we're just going to hit Next here. You're going to make sure all these boxes are checked, hit Finish. Now, your Bluetooth devices are going to pop up if you see your base in there, and you'll know it by the serial number. The serial number will be in the name. Go ahead and choose it and hit OK. Ours is not in there, so I'm going to hit Refresh. It will search. And there it is, base 13924. The rover's nearby, so it picked it up too, but we're choosing the base right now. Hit OK. Let it go through its setup process. And that's it. All right, now we're gonna do a 2-point localization. That's gonna give us a rough localization. It's not gonna be super accurate. It doesn't need to be. We're just gonna use it so that we can burn the base post in. As you can see on the screen here, there is no base post yet. So we're gonna use this 2-point localization to create that. Go to any control point. You can pick any whatever's the most convenient to get to, put your rover rod on it and plumb it up. It doesn't have to be super perfect, but you do want it in that circle. Now I'm going to go to survey, measure points, options, and control points. And this is the duration that it's going to measure. Yours might be 10. I think the default is 10. You're going to want it to be 60. It can be more, but 60 is good. So I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm not connected to the rover yet, so I'm going to go to survey, connect, and I'm going to tap on rover, and I'm going to hit OK. If your rover is not there in the list, just hit refresh. It will show up. Okay, now that it's connected, I'm going to go to data, control points. Now I'm on 1004, and that's what's highlighted. I'm going to hit edit. I'm going to go over to GPS, and if you haven't measured ever on this job plan, it's going to say NA in latitude and longitude. Mine says 0, it's fine. Just hit measure. And it's going to measure for about 60 seconds, and it's going to put in new coordinates. Okay, so that finished measuring. We're going to check use horizontal, use vertical, and we're going to hit OK. Now I'm not going to show it, but I am going to go to one more control point. It's going to be the exact same process. You'll go to the other control point, you'll physically set up, plumb the rod, choose the point, edit, GPS, and then hit measure. And then use vertical, use horizontal. And that's going to give you a rough localization so that we can burn this base post in. Now that we have a rough idea of where we are on the plans, we can use that information to create a point where our permanent base post is. So you're going to want to take the rover off of the rover rod. And you're going to want to put it on your permanent base post. Once you've got it on there, you're going to need to go to setup and antenna height. You need to change this to 0 because you want it to think it's on the ground. So we're going to change the 6.56 to 0. We're going to hit OK, hit OK. Now we're going to go to survey, measure points, control point. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to call it 4x4. And the description, I'm going to call it base. You can call it whatever you want, use whatever description you want, as long as you know what it is. Now you can see there's no local coordinates here, and on the GPS tab, no GPS coordinates. Hit start, and it's going to measure for about 60 seconds. Okay, so now that it's done measuring, you'll see that it has populated the local coordinates and populated the GPS, and it used the localization data to do that. And this is not accurate, but again, it doesn't have to be. The base post, you just need to know roughly where it is on your job plans. We're going to hit OK, and now you'll see right there, 4x4. So now we're going to move the rover back onto the rover rod, and do not forget to change the antenna height back. Our rover rod is set to 2 meters or 6.56 feet. So we're going to go back to survey, antenna, and we're changing it back to 6.56 feet. Hit OK, hit OK. That's done. Now we need to take the base and put it on the post because it's ready to be moved there. You don't have to turn it off. You can just take it off. Now we will need to start the GPS base station again in its new location. Just like before, we're going to go to setup, GPS base station, known control point. This time it's 4x4 or whatever you named yours. Connection is still Bluetooth, hit next. Antenna type is still going to be your GPS model. Now this antenna type this time is going to be 0 because that's what we burned it at. So we're going to put 0 here when we start the base station. Hit next. Radio type again beyond the scope of this video, and ours is set correctly, so I'm just going to hit next. Leave all these checked. Hit finish. Right here, if it does not show your base, hit refresh, but it should save it, so you should see it. I'm going to highlight base, hit OK. Now the base is set up. I'm going to take this tripod down and I'm going to measure that as our first point for our actual localization that we will be using throughout the duration of the construction project. So now that we've got the tripod down, we're going to measure our first point, which is where we originally set the tripod up. Again, you'll plumb the rod up. Okay, and now I need to reconnect to the rover because I was just setting up the base. So I'm going to go to Survey and Connect, choose the rover, tap OK. I'm going to go to Data, Control, Control Points, and we are on point 1000. So I'm going to choose 1000. Oops, there we go. I'm going to choose 1000, hit Edit, go over to GPS, hit Measure. It's going to wipe out the coordinates that you saw there. It's going to put fresh coordinates in there. Okay, now once we're back at this screen, it has new latitude, longitude, and height coordinates in there. I'm going to check use horizontal, use vertical. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to continue to the other control points. I'm not going to show that because it is the exact same process and you're going to want to do it at every single control point that you can find. And I'll catch up back with you again at our last control point. Okay, so we're now at the last control point, 1007 for us. Gonna plumb up the rover rod. Gonna go to Data, Control, Control Points. And you'll see here, 1007 is the only one that doesn't have any localization information. I'm gonna hit Measure. All right, so now that that's done, we're gonna hit Use Horizontal and Use Vertical. We're gonna hit OK. And now you're gonna see these are all the horizontal and vertical accuracies. And they look good. They're all green, they're all within the threshold. Now, occasionally you will have one or more of these numbers that are red. If they are, you'll want to select the one that's red, make note if it's the horizontal or if it's the vertical. Just says H.error and V.error, horizontal and vertical error. So select the one that's red, hit Edit, go to the GPS tab, and if it was horizontal that was red, uncheck horizontal. If it was vertical that was red, uncheck vertical. If it was both, uncheck both. And then hit OK, and then see how everything else looks. Now there's just one more thing we're gonna do. We're gonna quickly check a control point to make sure it looks good. That's something you're gonna wanna do at the start of every day. You're gonna wanna make sure your accuracy looks good at the start of every day. But we're gonna do that real quick, and then that's it, the localization's complete. Okay, so we're now back at the first control point that we used to start this localization, and we're just going to check it. You'll need to make sure that your rover rod is plumb. If it's not plumb, you're not going to see the numbers you want to see, no matter how good the localization is. All right, we're plumbed up. So now I'm going to go to Survey, Stakeout. I'm going to choose Control Point. This control point is 1000. You'll want to choose whichever one you're on. I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. 500s, 400s, 600s vertical, 300s, 200s horizontal. So everything looks good. Your localization is complete.